You're listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. This is the show that talks about identity and access management and making sure you know who has access to what. Let's get started. Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. Sorry, I couldn't hear you over there. What are you saying over this, James Brown?
Yeah, exactly. So for those that don't know, we are live at the Oktane 22 conference in San Francisco. We're also joined here by one of the superstars on the RSM Digital Identity team. His name is Ben Doud. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So before we get started here, I think one of the things want to give a shout out to Stephen Strong and April Lujan and really the entire Okta team for hooking us up with what I can say is our first sort of like official room where we actually have our logo on the door, and we have like this temporary white-walled room in the middle of the show floor, so there's a lot of background noise.
Technically, I think we're in the same area as all the gold sponsors.
Yes.
So
Moving
up.
Kind of makes us golden.
It's not a sweet, Jim. I'm sorry, but
It's all right.
I like this better, actually.
We'll come up with a name for it.
Yeah. So we're going to be at Oktane all week. Plan is to bring episodes pretty much every day for the next few days. We've got a lot of good things lined up. But definitely want to give a shout out to the Okta team. Definitely want to give a shout out to the RSM team. They're the ones that are funding our travel to be out here. So thank you very much to the RSM side. Why don't we get into sort of a recap of day one? So it is Tuesday night as we record this. The sounds that you hear behind all of us is the opening sort of get together. What do you call it? Like social bash.
It's a welcome reception.
The welcome reception. Thank you very much.
Nailed
That's what I was looking for. There's a DJ playing. Lots of people here. And yeah, good times.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. A couple of shout outs that I'd like to give. People I met. One was Paul Petit, and hopefully I got his
Petit
last
or
name
Petit?
right. Yeah, I
don't know.
I'm
Sorry,
not
Paul.
100% sure, but Paul came up, introduced himself, and he's a fan of the show. Listens as he walks his dog, which I thought was really cool. And also,
as a dog person, I'm on board with that.
I'm a fan of Paul.
Yeah.
Paul's a fan of the show. It's symbiotic.
How did he recognize you?
He
just
recognized me
you?
probably by my crazy hair.
Okay, got it.
I would say.
All right, I didn't want to say anything, but yeah.
The other person I'd like to give a shout out to is Tomas. And so Tomas is writing haikus for whoever wants a haiku. But you have to give them a little bit of information, and it's what's on your mind. And so what was on my mind is killing the password, as you can imagine.
Violence. You woke up and chose violence.
Yes, I went right for the violence, and he took that violence and turned it into a call for patriotism around killing the password. So let me read my haiku. Is from up on high, the heralds cry, passwords are dead. Oh, let freedom ring.
Beautiful.
Wow. That you could put that into any historical sort of context or fantasy context. I can see that as very much being a Game of Thrones episode.
It could be Game of Thrones. I was thinking of they can take our lives, but they can never take our freedoms. But they can take our passwords. Take our passwords.
That was the third part of that most people don't know. They don't teach you that in the history books.
That's the part where the video cuts off for most people.
So let's talk about the Okta conference. Ben, you and I spent some time sort of beginning the day at the kind of the partner side of things. There were a couple of things that they announced. We'll get into that in 1 second, because I just realized this is your first time on the show.
It is.
So we have to find out what your identity background is.
Oh, no.
Is identity something that you chose, or did it choose you?
A prepared question. So identity about 5 or 6 years ago was something that I was told I would be assuming the role in as I rolled off a program and took the spot of another person who had moved out. So I was kind of put in charge of the identity reins for the company with little to no experience before doing that. And I really discovered both a skill at it, and it was actually something that I really enjoyed doing. And so really excited to be on a identity-centric team now, and really focusing on only identity for the most part. So very happy to be here.
So it chose you for sure then, sort of. You did make the conscious decision to say that I'm going to be an identity?
Now I
Now
did,
you have,
yes.
right.
But when I first got into it, it was an assignment that I was given.
Got it. All right, so let's talk. I guess the opening part for you and I was the partner stuff. Probably, I'll be honest, a little probably boring for most people who are listening if they're not in that side of the areas, but really kind of talking about how Okta engages with partners to really kind of help make sure the product deployments go well and they're getting the maximum value out of the product. There were a couple things that were of note, interest today. I don't want to steal the thunder. I want to give you all the honors.
Ooh.
So what was
I was
talked
taking
about
notes.
Today? Yeah, I'm sure you were.
Sure. So I think the big one most visually represented is the new brand. They've tightened up the word Okta, the font, put some meaning behind it around, I believe it was stability and consistency, a little bit more trustworthy of a logo. It seemed to be the play they were making. And then the actual logo itself that they call the Aura, the traditional Okta blue O, is now more of it reminds me, and Jeff, you put it very well earlier, of piano keys in a concentric circle. And what they do in their little animation is they zoom in on it and it actually comes out as little video reels that tell the story of someone or multiple people's identity. So it's a very nice dynamic visual.
I thought it looked like piano keys. I'm 147% positive that that's not the intention. The way they described it is facets. I guess sort of like to kind of talk about the complexity of identity, but how it can all come together. But anyway, there is a new
look like
logo.
people to me. It's like
People?
yeah, like there's little heads on the end of them, right?
No.
I think from far away you could think that way. I believe they wanted it to be like the old-fashioned slide inserts or something that are usually photos, but in this case they were little video reels. But yeah, to the facets that show a person and
well, we saw
their
April
identity.
in the hallway after the announcement.
She gave a good
and then,
description.
Yeah, she was kind of talking about. I was like, for the old heads out there like myself, right? Remember you have like the photo slides where like cha-chunk, 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 kind of around the circle.
Right.
That was sort of the thought, that I had around it, as well as I think April. And each of those things, it's kind of hard to describe on an audio podcast. You kind of have to watch the video, but essentially each kind of floats up into some sort of video or picture, whatever it may be. I thought it was cool. It was a really slick
You had to be
kind of
there.
animation. Yeah, you had to be there. So that was kind of the partner stuff. There was also one other thing that they announced. So you want to talk about the demo platform?
Yeah, so the new demo.okta.com has been released, and I think the coolest part about it is it's a fully built out demo platform, very similar to what they had in Okta previous to this, but it is available to anyone and everyone. You can log in, you can make an account, you can save anything that you built in the demo platform. But that big differentiator from what it used to be to what it is now, I think, is the availability. Along with you can build CIC or Customer Identity Cloud capabilities, formerly known as Auth0, and I think that entire demo platform being available to anyone who wants to get in there and even just try it out or demo it for customers or anything like that, I think is a really huge enabler and is very smart of them to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think anytime you can visualize how it works and see it, it's worth so much more than just kind of talking about it. So that was kind of cool. Anything I had to ditch out for a couple hours to take some meetings, but anything in the afternoon that was interesting?
Let's see.
As he scrolls through his notes.
Yeah, as I go through my notes. I think the afternoon was a lot more conversation, panel-based. There was a couple of business success stories, so it was much less announcement-heavy and much more, what do these individual people think about this specific use case. So yeah, not quite as much announcements, I would say.
What is the tagline for the conference? Is something like identity is personal?
There's two. It's like your identity is yours or something.
Your identity
belongs to you. Yeah. And the other one from the partner summit is better together, like peanut butter and jelly or fish and chips.
Yeah, I mean the better together we hear a lot, used a lot. The personal identity piece reminded me of self-sovereign identity, the idea that you could have your identity, you own it. It's not something that's issued by an identity provider, maybe digital wallets. And so it makes me wonder if that's part of the future vision is, you've got, of course, enterprise IDP. Of course, you've got commercial IDP. What about identity Okta as a IDP? In other words, creating these self-sovereign identities. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's what it made me think of.
Well, I think we're a ways out from there. I think the idea is that, Okta is the neutral identity partner. So if you're thinking about it strategically from an authentication standpoint, the idea that Okta is sort of like the glue that kind of holds everything together. Connect to any app, connect to any service. They don't really care. Versus maybe something that is more of a platform play where, there are other products that in the authentication space, like, okay, we're very good in what they do and in sort of like their ecosystem. Whereas I think this is where the positioning is. But I'm not going to try and sell Okta's product. They do it just fine themselves. But
Right.
That's sort of the intention is, I think, be that sort of centralized IDP, essentially, that connects to everything.
I think there's been this idea for a long time about, well, what would be the ultimate identity provider? Maybe it would be a government identity or entity. And then you start to run into, well, not everyone falls under that government entity, so that excludes a lot of people. That's not going to work. And then you think of somewhere like a big social identity provider like Facebook, and that's where we were 10 years ago. We thought that might be it. I think nobody thinks that these days that that's going to happen. Somebody else maybe.
Who's won the social identity wars at this point? Is it? I feel like I use Google for everything.
I would say
by
Google.
default. It's Google, Microsoft.
I almost don't want to use Facebook.
Right,
Every time I see it, I have no good reason. I think I use my Google credentials, like you're saying, much more. I think I treat it more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, Facebook is for, well, at least from my perspective, it's for the Facebook login, but also all the the dumb apps that you connect to, right?
All the games.
Which Game of Thrones character are you, or
Farmville.
What kind of potato would you be?
Right.
So now we've transitioned to the evening time, and it sounds like it's getting a little bit quieter out there. DJ must have stopped for a little bit, but it is the official kind of kickoff for the real sort of Oktane conference that most people are probably interested in. It kicked off with a kind of a cool interview with Serena Williams. Any thoughts from how that went down?
She did a good job. I thought she was very authentic. There were portions of the interview where I think she laughed at her own response, or gave a very personal response to a lot of things. So it was kind of cool to see that live and being in the audience.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't something that was staged, and wasn't like her repeating some presentation that she's done 20 times. It was an interview. She was speaking from the heart. I really like her. Like I didn't know much about her other than what you saw on like ESPN news shows and things like that. And I mean, that you're never getting the real sense of the person. I also thought that kind of during the interview, it's almost like there's the opportunity for her to be a caricature, like, hey, you're so awesome. Like, what's your next awesome thing you're going to do? Or, you should fit some kind of preconception that exists for you. But I think anybody who watched that interview said, whoa, she's a little bit different than I expected her to be. At least that was the thing I came away with. And she was very thoughtful. There was a whole dialogue around her venture capital. And it was like, she has like bigger goals. But at the same time, she's doing it because she is an entrepreneur and wants to make money.
Yeah.
And like that came through to me as like, you know what, that's really genuine. Like she's not trying to make it sound like she's doing some kind of like, social justice or religious movement or anything like that. It's like, hey, I'm in venture capital because, now there was the whole angle of like what brought her into it, which I think she does have a desire to have some change on society. but she was very clear that like, hey, I want to be profitable.
Yeah. And to kind of build on that, there was a point where the interviewer had asked her, does she feel that she's an athlete, an advocate, or both? And I think she did a good job of focusing in on that advocate part. And she kind of detailed how she doesn't see herself as a defined advocate, or like that she has to do these things because it's a social justice thing. She very much answered and said, no, I just think this is the right way to behave. And when I see something wrong, I'm going to say that it's wrong and maybe do something to change it. But it was very much because her whole focus with the venture company is about getting more women and more women of color into these fundings and these venture capitalism situations. And it's purely because that's what she wants to do, not that she feels that she needs to be an advocate. And I think that's where the genuine part comes in.
I think that's the key word. It was genuine. It was a real interview. It was not anything staged. It covered a lot of ground for 45 minutes. Kind of talked about a whole bunch of different stuff. But I thought it was good. It was a good opening sort of conversation ahead of like the identity talk, which is really kind of tomorrow. So kind of going through that and making sure that I think people kind of get off on a little more casual footing. It's probably nice. So that was good. Jim, and I don't know, Ben, if you saw this, but Jim, you and I kind of sat through a talk that Matt Vlasic, I'm going to screw that up. He's going to be on the show tomorrow, I think it is.
We'll get it right by then.
I'll get it right by then. But he's with Jamf, and he talked about some of the new authentication options that are available for Mac OS between Okta and some other things that have been worked on to make that smoother, which I thought was pretty interesting. I'm a Mac person myself, and it seemed like it's gotten so much better than the old days. But I thought it was pretty interesting, and I'm sure we'll get into that with him tomorrow.
Yeah, it was like a speed presentation because there's so much going on with authentication options within the Mac OS environment. One thing that I'd say, listen to that episode because we've kind of come up with some questions, and they're not like snowball questions. And it's questions like, all right, well, why would a CIO want to run Mac notebooks or laptops in the environment? Why not just run Windows? If it's more secure. So I think Matt's ready to take on those types of questions. I did have a chance to chat with him.
And those aren't new questions, right? I think the whole Mac versus Windows debate has been around for a while. I think famously IBM switched over to Macs as like their primary enterprise machine.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. It was crazy because it was like 5 or 6 years ago when it happened, maybe even longer at this point. And, their study was that, it was cheaper to run with Macs because they were less prone to errors of different sorts, whether it's hardware or just software things that were going on.
You and I have run into a lot of organizations where both the ones that we worked for and ones that we've worked, as consultants for that do not allow Mac in their environment. So
I think it's a shame.
It is. I think so too. I mean, I'm a huge Mac fan, but anyway, Matt will help us articulate how it can be just as secure, if it can be.
Yeah. Let's see. They've turned on the lights in here, so I'm wondering if we'll get kicked out at some point.
Somebody may be knocking on the door soon.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some other notes? I know, Ben, you had a run-in maybe with the claw machine.
The claw machine is not as easy as it appears to be. I don't think I saw anyone walk away from the claw machine with a prize, and I had my eyes on a nice Okta-branded Yeti in there, and the claw is flimsy in comparison to...
The claw was unkind.
Yes. The claw judged me unworthy, I would say.
So they had this thing that I saw was called Okta for Good, and they've done this now at a few different conferences we've been at, but basically it's a Plinko-style game where you take a disc, kind of drop it at the top, and it kind of bounces off different pegs and goes down into different dollar amounts. And instead of a prize, it's essentially a donation that Okta makes to some cause or charity that's listed. I saw someone get the max prize, which was $100 donation, and it's there's only one slot. It's in the middle, and I happened to be walking by at the right time, so lucky. I guess that worked. We're here recording this podcast. I did not win the Powerball. I'm sad to tell you. So this podcast will continue.
Do we have a limited number of tries at the Okta for Good Plinko, or is it one for everyone?
I don't know. I think, I'm not sure how they're validating
I'll
that
just
you
keep getting in
haven't
line.
already done it. Yeah. I think that's
it.
probably money that they're happy to give away.
There's also a photo booth. There's a lot of cool stuff here. There's the haiku station. I think, and Ben, it looks like you have some
I'm stocking up on
swag.
drinkware.
Yeah. Well, let's end on that lighter note. So what is the best Oktane 22 vendor swag so far?
Oh,
Ben immediately, his eyes went up.
Whoa.
He's already gotten like 5 or 6 things over there. I see something that's cool that was in your loot pile that I'm going to try and go get. What's the best thing you've seen so far, Ben?
well, so my wife and I are big fans of camping and containers that we can use to hold water. And so I got this foldable, it reminds me of an accordion. It's basically this black rubber bottle that will collapse down and has a cap and everything on it. And
It's a collapsible water bottle. It's like some sort of like rubber or something.
Comes from Arctic Wolf.
Yeah. So congrats, Arctic Wolf. That's a good vendor swag item.
That's right.
Yeah.
Jim, did you say anything out there yet?
I got a phone prop, basically holds your phone in place.
Okay.
From LexisNexis.
All right.
And a beer koozie from Hyper.
Okay. I haven't gotten anything yet.
Nothing great. Like, it's good stuff, but not.
I'll wait for you guys to like find the good stuff. So I'm gonna go to Arctic Wolf, get the water bottle. I'll check out the phone holder.
They don't have a lot of these.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get there sooner. So tomorrow is sort of like the official, I guess, kind of opening day of all the different identity talks. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for this episode. It's kind of a quick thing to get out there for folks to listen to as they're getting ready tomorrow morning, perhaps. We'll have a whole bunch of episodes again coming up the next few days. Again, shout out to the Okta team for helping us out. Shout out to RSM for funding the travel here. And shout out to all you guys who are listening to this stuff. So if you can take a moment, hit pause, Alt-Tab, swipe up and swipe over to whatever it is they need to do to give us a thumbs up or a rating or whatever. That's all helpful and helps us out a lot. Or sharing with other people. So if you could take a second to do that, that would be super cool. And with that, we'll go ahead and leave it for this one. And we'll talk with you all in the next one. We're on the web, identitycenter.com, IDAC Podcast on Twitter. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and visit us on the web at identityatthecenter.com.